The astropathic choir of Relay Station, Gamma 9, did not die from demonic possession. They died from silence. It was a silence so absolute and sudden that it crushed their minds under the weight of instant nothingness. Within the grand spire of the station, 300 blind psychics slumped in their brass harnesses. Blood ran from their eyes and pooled on the deck. The scribe serving them dropped his slate. He looked at the biomonitors. Flat lines stretched across every green screen. The scribe did not scream. He simply picked up his quill and began to fill out the form for a total station failure. He knew the administratum would need the paperwork before they sent help. It would take 6 months for the request to reach the subsector capital. It would take another year for a ship to arrive. The scribe worked by candlelight because the station reactor had also gone cold. His breath misted in the freezing air. He checked his ration pack. He had 3 days of food left. He continued to write. Outside the station, the void of space had changed. The Great Rift, the massive scar that split the galaxy in half, usually boiled with purple fire and screaming souls. It was a storm of impossible colors that drove men mad. But near the agri world of Hestia, the storm had stopped. It had not faded away. It had been forced into shape. A perfect sphere of green energy now sat in the middle of the chaotic dark. It was static. It was controlled. It was geometrically perfect. The Imperial Navy patrol ship Righteous Intent saw the sphere on their augers. Captain Hrolf stared at the sensor readouts. The machine spirit of his ship was trembling. The cogitators were spitting out data that made no sense. The energy signature was not Xenos. It was not warpcraft. It was something older and colder. It felt like judgment. Hrolf ordered a scan. The servitors plugged into the walls twitched. Their flesh was grey from malnutrition and old grease. They fed the data into the main screen. In the center of the green sphere, a structure had appeared. It was a fortress of grey stone and iron. It looked like a castle from ancient Terra, but it was the size of a small moon. It had no thrusters. It had no engine exhaust. It sat in the void as if it had always been there. It defied the laws of physics that the tech priests worshipped. A single signal broadcasted from the fortress. It was not encrypted. It was standard Gothic, but the accent was archaic and regal. It played on a loop on every frequency, overpowering the distress calls of the merchant fleet nearby. "I am Doom," the voice said. "There is only order." On the surface of Hestia below, the peasants stopped harvesting the grain. The sky had turned a sickly green. The clouds stopped moving. The wind died. A commissar drew his bolt pistol. He aimed it at the sky. He did not know what to shoot, but his training told him to hate the unknown. He shouted orders, but his voice sounded thin in the heavy air. The atmosphere tasted like ozone and copper. In the capital city, the planetary governor woke up. His bedroom was cold. His data slate was glowing with a message he did not authorize. It was a map of his world, but the borders were redrawn. The tithe grades were crossed out. New efficiency metrics were listed. They were impossible to meet without advanced technology that the Imperium had lost 10,000 years ago. The message ended with a simple command. Submission is survival. The governor rang his bell for a servant. No one came. The palace guard was gone. He looked out his window. In the courtyard, a portal of green fire swirled. From it marched figures in grey armor. They were not space marines. They were not guard. They were robots. They moved in perfect unison. They did not shout. They did not pause. They simply began to secure the perimeter. The invasion had not started with a bombardment. It started with an annexation. The bureaucratic machinery of the Imperium was already too slow to stop it. The silence had only just begun. The occupation of agri-world Hestia did not resemble a war so much as a sudden, violent correction of error. The Planetary Defense Force General, Marcus Havelock, stood on the command deck of his Baneblade super heavy tank. He looked through his magnoculars at the capital city's northern gate. His tanks were arranged in a standard firing line. He had 3 regiments of infantry digging trenches in the mud. According to the Tactica Imperialis, he had enough firepower to level the city block by block. But the enemy was not hiding in the city. The enemy was fixing it. Havelock watched as silver robots, identical in face and form, scaled the rusted atmospheric vents of Hive primers. For 3 centuries those vents had spewed black smog that choked the lower levels. The tech priests had claimed the machine spirits of the vents were angry and required blood sacrifices to function. The robots did not offer blood. They tore open the casings with metal hands. They removed the clogged filters. They welded new plates with green energy beams that made no sound. Within an hour the smoke stopped. The air above the Hive turned clear for the first time in living memory. The citizens watching from the slums did not cheer. They wept in terror. They believed that clear skies were a sign of the end times. General Havelock lowered his magnoculars. He tapped the vox bead in his ear. He ordered the first artillery company to fire. He did not care that the robots were repairing the infrastructure. They were unsanctioned. They were alien. Therefore, they had to be destroyed. The basilisk artillery guns roared. Heavy earthshaker shells arced through the sky. They screamed down toward the robots working on the vents. Havelock waited for the explosions. He waited for the satisfaction of seeing the invaders turn to scrap. The shells did not hit. 50 meters from the Hive walls, the air shimmered. A geometric grid of green light appeared in the sky. It was a hexagonal lattice, perfectly mathematical. The shells hit the light and simply stopped. They did not explode. Their momentum was cancelled instantly. They fell harmlessly to the ground like stones dropped by a child. The green grid faded. The robots did not even look up. They continued to weld. Panic began to spread through the trench lines. The guardsmen gripped their laser guns tighter. They had fought orcs. They had fought rebels. They understood enemies that bled or screamed. They did not understand an enemy that ignored artillery. Havelock keyed his vox again. He ordered a general charge. If the shells would not work, the treads of his tanks would crush them. The Baneblade lurches forward. Its engine growled, a beast of promethium and steel. Behind it, Leman Russ battle tanks advanced. Infantry followed, chanting prayers to the God Emperor to steady their nerves. The silver robots stopped working. They turned in unison. There were only 50 of them on the wall. Against them marched 10,000 men and 100 tanks. The robots jumped. They did not use jump packs. They did not use gravity chutes. They stepped off the wall and green energy flared around their boots. They landed in the mud with a heavy thud that shook the ground. They stood in a perfect phalanx. One of them stepped forward. It raised a hand. The lead Leman Russ tank fired its battle cannon. The laser beam from the robot's hand moved faster than the shell. The beam hit the shell in midair. The shell detonated prematurely, blinding the tank drivers with smoke. The robots advanced. They walked at a steady pace. They did not run. They did not take cover. The guardsmen opened fire. Thousands of las bolts struck the silver armor. The armor did not scorch. The energy dissipated across the metal surface like water on oil. The robots reached the front line. The slaughter was precise. They did not tear the soldiers apart like demons would. They simply disarmed them. A robot would grab a laser gun, crush the receiver, and toss the weapon aside. If a soldier resisted, a single backhand strike knocked them unconscious. They moved through the infantry like a man walking through tall grass. They reached the tanks. General Havelock ordered his driver to run them down. The Baneblade weighed 300 tons. It hit the lead robot. Metal screamed. The tank stopped dead. The robot had not moved. It held its hands against the front armor of the Baneblade. The treads churned the mud, digging a deep pit. But the tank could not move the machine. The robot's eyes glowed brighter. Green electricity arced from its fingers into the tank's hull. Inside the Baneblade, the lights died. The engine sputtered and cut out. The heavy bolter turrets went limp. The machine spirit of the tank, usually aggressive and loud, went silent. It was not dead. It was suppressed. Havelock drew his bolt pistol in the dark. The command hatch above him was ripped off its hinges. The sky appeared. A silver face looked down at him. "You are obsolete," the robot said. Its voice was flat, metallic, and terrifyingly calm. "Your weapons are crude. Your tactics are wasteful. Surrender, and you will serve a higher purpose." Havelock fired his pistol. The bolt's round hit the robot's faceplate and bounced off. The robot reached down. It grabbed Havelock by his flak armor and lifted him out of the tank. It dropped him into the mud. Around him, the entire armored column was silent. Every tank had been disabled. The infantry were running or kneeling in surrender. The silence had returned. The robot looked at the general. "Do not mistake mercy for weakness," the robot stated. "Lord Doom requires labor, not corpses. Go to your men. Tell them the harvest begins at dawn. The tithe is cancelled. The food stays here." Havelock looked up. The concept was alien. The tithe was holy. To keep the food was treason against terror. But looking at the silent tanks and the burning green eyes of the machines, Havelock realized that terror was very far away. He stood up slowly. He nodded. The conquest of Hestia was over in 3 hours. The distress signal from Hestia took 2 weeks to reach the nearest astropathic relay. The warp was turbulent, roiling with the psychic backlash of the Great Rift. When the message finally arrived at the sector capital of Antax, it was fragmented. The blind astropath who received it screamed of a green sun and a face of iron. The message was transcribed onto parchment by a servitor. It was placed in a pneumatic tube. It travelled through miles of brass piping to the office of Prefectus Valerius. Valerius was a low-level administrator in the Departamento Munitorum. His desk was buried under stacks of vellum. He had not seen sunlight in 40 years. He picked up the message canister. He broke the wax seal. He read the report. Planetary governorship overthrown. Unknown Xenos or heretic forces. Tithe shipment delayed. Valerius sighed. A delayed tithe meant paperwork. He did not care about the invasion. Invasions happened every day. He cared about the grain quotas. If Hestia did not send its grain, the hive world of Antax would starve in 3 months. That would cause riots. Riots meant he would have to file reports on civil unrest. He dipped his quill in ink. He filled out a form requesting a military assessment. He marked it as priority level 4, not urgent but concerning. He placed the form in his outbox. It would sit there for another week before a courier picked it up. The Imperium of Man was a machine of 1,000,000 gears, and most of them were rusted. While Valerius filed his paper, Victor von Doom was already rewriting the genetic code of the wheat on Hestia. He had established a laboratory in the governor's palace. He worked alone. He did not trust the local scribes. They were superstitious fools who thought chemistry was magic. Doom wore his armor, the green tunic draped over the metal. He looked through a microscope. The crops on this world were pathetic. They had been degraded by thousands of years of cloning and radiation. The soil was toxic. The people were starving because they were eating poison. Doom adjusted the dials on his sequencer. He introduced a synthetic nutrient strain he had developed in Latveria. It would triple the yield. It would clean the soil. It would make the people strong. Doom did not do this out of kindness. He did it because he demanded excellence. A starving population was an inefficient workforce. He needed them healthy to build his citadel. He looked up from the microscope. A Doombot stood by the door. "Report," Doom said. "The machine spirit of the local communications array has been purged," the Doombot replied. "We have intercepted a transmission from a nearby star system. An Adeptus Mechanicus exploration fleet is on an intercept course. They have detected the energy signature of the rift stabilization." Doom stood up. He walked to the balcony. He looked out over the city. The smog was gone. The lights were on. Order was emerging from the chaos. "The priesthood of Mars," Doom mused. "They hoard technology like dragons hoard gold. They do not understand what they possess. They worship the toaster but have forgotten how to build the heating element. They will be hostile," the Doombot noted. "Let them come," Doom said. He clenched his gauntlet. The metal groaned. "I require their raw materials, and their ignorance requires a lesson. Prepare the defenses. Do not destroy their ships. I want to study their warp drives." The forge world of Ferrum Sigma was a planet of rust and fire. Its surface was covered in factories that had churned out munitions for 5,000 years. Magos Dominus Varnak ruled this world. Varnak was more machine than man. He had replaced his legs with anti-gravity suspensors. His face was a cluster of optical sensors and logic gates. He had 4 mechadendrites extending from his spine, each tipping with a different tool of disassembly. Varnak sat on his command throne aboard the cruiser Omniscious Truth. The ship moved through the void toward Hestia. Varnak's logic cores were buzzing with excitement. The long-range augers had detected a geometric anomaly, a sphere of perfect order in the warp. This was impossible. The warp was pure chaos. To impose order upon it required technology from the Dark Age of technology, an STC, a standard template construct. If Varnak could recover an STC, he would be a hero to the Mechanicus. He would be elevated to Archmagos. He might even be granted an audience with the Fabricator General on Mars. Greed, cold and calculated, filled his binary thoughts. He did not report his findings to the Sector Command. He did not want to share the glory. He took 3 macroclades of Skitarii Rangers and the maniples of Castellan robots. It was enough to conquer a subsector. The Omniscious Truth broke real space orbit above Hestia. Varnak scanned the planet. He expected to see burning cities. Instead, he saw organized agricultural grids. He saw a massive fortress floating in low orbit. It was not Imperial design. It was not Eldar. It was brutalist, efficient, and radiated power. "Hail the vessel," Varnak commanded. His voice was a screech of static and synthesized vowels. "Command them to surrender the Archaeotech in the name of the machine god." The screen on the bridge flickered. The face of Doom appeared. Varnak's sensors analyzed the image. Humanoid, armored, high-grade alloy, unknown manufacture. "I am Magos Varnak," the tech priest intoned. "You are in possession of forbidden technology. You are in violation of the Treaty of Mars. Power down your shields and prepare to be boarded." Doom looked at the camera. He did not blink. His mask was expressionless, but his voice dripped with disdain. "You speak of technology, priest. You are a scavenger picking through the bones of your betters. You wear the skin of science, but you lack the soul of discovery." "Blasphemy," Varnak hissed. His mechadendrites twitched. "Open fire. Target his shield generators. Deploy the boarding torpedoes." The Omniscious Truth unleashed a broadside. Macro cannon shells the size of buildings hurtled toward Doom's fortress. At the same time, 50 boarding torpedoes launched from the launch bays, filled with Skitarii soldiers. Doom did not fire back. The fortress shields flared green. The macro shells hit the shields and dissolved. They were atomized. The energy was absorbed into the fortress grid. Varnak watched the energy readout spike. The enemy was using the kinetic energy of the attack to power their own systems. It was 100% efficient. Varnak's logic coils overheated in sheer disbelief. The boarding torpedoes punched through the outer perimeter. They slammed into the stone hull of the fortress. Melter charges blew the hatches. The Skitarii poured out. They were holy warriors of the machine, their eyelids removed so they could never close their eyes to the data stream. They carried galvanic rifles and arc lances. They ran into the corridors of the fortress. The walls were smooth stone, lit by glowing strips of green light. There was no cover. The Skitarii vanguard advanced, radiation leaking from their carbines. At the end of the hallway, a single figure waited. It was not a robot. It was Doom himself. He stood with his arms crossed. The Skitarii Alpha raised his rifle. Target acquired, the Alpha clicked. Eliminate. The Skitarii fired. Dozens of radioactive bullets flew down the hall. Doom raised one hand. He did not use a shield. He spoke a word. It was a word of power, a blend of sorcery and mathematics. A rune flared in the air before him. The bullets stopped. They hovered in mid-air, spinning lazily. Doom clenched his fist. The bullets turned around. Return to sender, Doom said. The bullets flew back. The Skitarii were cut down by their own fire. The Alpha fell, his chest plate shattered. Doom walked forward. He stepped over the bodies. He did not look down. He tapped the side of his mask. Magos Varnak, Doom broadcasted to the ship above. Your soldiers are flawed. Their reaction times are sluggish. Their programming is derivative. I am taking control of your vessel. Varnak tried to sever the link. He couldn't. The screens on the Omnissiah's truth turned green. The code running across them changed. It was not binary. It was something more complex. It was a recursive algorithm that rewrote the ship's operating system in seconds. The servitors on the bridge stopped working. They stood still, drool dripping from their slack jaws. Varnak fell from his throne. His anti-grav suspensors failed. He crawled across the deck, his metal claws scratching the steel. What are you? Varnak screamed. I am the future. Doom's voice boomed from every speaker. And you have much to learn. The ship's engines turned. The weapons powered down. The Omnissiah's truth began to dock with the fortress. Varnak lay on the floor, helpless. He had come to steal technology. Instead, he had been archived. The disappearance of a Mechanicus cruiser could not be ignored. The distress beacon Varnak's ship released before it was hacked reached the subsector naval base at Sapramundi. This time, the response was military. The bureaucracy was bypassed because the Mechanicus had invoked the Protocol of Technologica Perditum. This meant high-value tech was at risk. The High Lords of Terra's representatives authorized a rapid response. They sent the Iron Hands. Clan Company Rokan was returning from a crusade against the Orcs. They were close, they were efficient, they were brutal. Captain Karras led them. Karras had replaced his left eye, his right arm, and both legs with bionics. He believed the flesh was weak. He believed emotion was a defect. He read the report on Hestia. Logic dictates a high-level threat, Karras told his lieutenants in the strategiarium of the strike cruiser Fist of Medusa. Enemy has subverted local PDF and neutralized Mechanicus assets. Enemy employs unknown energy shielding. We will not engage in negotiation. We will execute a drop pod assault directly onto the enemy command structure. We will decapitate the leadership. We will purge the infection. The Iron Hands did not pray. They performed maintenance rites. They oiled their bolters. They checked the calibration of their power axes. They loaded into the drop pods. The fist of Medusa entered the system. They ignored the warnings broadcasting from the fortress. They ignored the green sphere. They accelerated to attack speed. The bombardment cannons opened fire to clear a landing zone on the fortress surface. Drop, Karis commanded. 50 drop pods launched. They streaked through the void, burning retro thrusters. They slammed into the courtyard of Doom's fortress. The doors blasted open. For the Gorgon, for the Emperor, the Space Marines roared. But they did not roar with passion. They roared with the mechanical precision of a recording. 10 squads of Iron Hands deployed. They formed a defensive perimeter. Bolters barked. Explosive rounds detonated against the stone walls. Karis scanned for targets. The courtyard was empty. No robots. No guards. Just the green portal swirling in the center. Ambush detected, Karis noted calmly. Defensive formation Delta. From the shadows of the archways, the Doombots emerged, but these were different. They were bulkier. They had been upgraded. Doom had analyzed the combat data from the PDF fight. He had analyzed the Skittery weapons. These new Doombots had reinforced plating to withstand bolter fire. They carried heavy energy cannons. The firefight was intense. The Iron Hands were transhuman warriors. They moved faster than the eye could follow. A Marine took a plasma shot to the shoulder, lost his arm, and didn't even flinch. He kept firing his bolter with his remaining hand. Karis charged a Doombot. His power axe crackled. He swung it with force enough to cleave a tank. The axe hit the Doombot's arm. Metal sheared. The robot staggered, but it did not fall. It grabbed the axe shaft. It pulled Karis close. Flesh is weak. The Doombot mimicked the Iron Hand's war cry. It was a mockery. Karis headbutted the robot. His bionic skull crumpled the robot's faceplate. He ripped his axe free and severed the robot's head. Forward, Karis ordered. Target the central tower. They pushed through the waves of machines. They were taking casualties. Brother Hrodo was blown apart by a missile. Brother Varkas was disintegrated by a green beam. But the Iron Hands did not stop. They calculated the loss ratios and determined victory was still probable. They breached the main doors of the tower. They entered the throne room. Dr. Doom sat on a throne of stone and circuitry. He was reading a datapad. He did not look up as the Space Marine stormed in. Karis aimed his storm bolter at Doom's head. Target identified, Karis said. Execution. He pulled the trigger. The bolt rounds flew. Doom waved his hand. A wall of blue energy materialized. The rounds hit it and stopped. Doom stood up. He placed the datapad on his throne. Space Marines, Doom said. Genetically modified post-humans, created by a scientist you call a god. You are impressive specimens, but you are flawed. Die, heretic, Karis said. He charged. The other 4 surviving Marines charged with him. Doom stepped off the dais. He moved with a speed that matched the Astartes. His armor was powered by a microfusion reactor, but his movements were enhanced by magic. He ducked under Karis's axe swing. He punched Karis in the chest. The blow dented the ceramite armor and cracked the black carapace beneath. Karis gasped, his backup lung taking over instantly. Doom spun. He fired a blast of energy from his gauntlets. It hit 2 Marines, knocking them backward into the stone pillars. The pillars collapsed, burying them. Karis recovered. He swung again. Doom caught the axe blade in his bare hand. Sparks flew. The energy field of the axe fought against the energy field of Doom's gauntlet. Doom looked Karis in the eye. Say, you hate your flesh, Doom said conversationally as they struggled. You replace it with iron. You seek perfection in the machine. I admire that. But you serve a rotting corpse. You serve stagnation. I serve the Omnissiah's will, Karis grunted, pushing with all his strength. I am the Omnissiah, Doom said. Or I will be, when I am finished. Doom twisted his wrist. The power axe shattered. Karis stumbled back. Doom extended his hand. Green bands of energy wrapped around Karis, binding his arms and legs. The captain struggled, his servos whining, but the bands were unbreakable. They were crimson bands of Sitarak, adapted for this dimension. The other Marines tried to fire. Doom silenced them with a gesture, sealing their vocal emitters and locking their armor joints. They stood frozen, statues in their own power armor. Doom walked up to Karis. He tapped the bionic eye of the Space Marine. I will not kill you, Doom said. That would be a waste of resources. You are a weapon, and weapons can be recalibrated. Doom turned to his Doombots, who were entering the room. Take them to the stasis cells. Begin the analysis of their gene seed. I want to know how the Emperor built them, and I want to know how to improve them. Karis watched helplessly as he was dragged away. He tried to send a final Vox transmission, but his comms were jammed. His tactical display flickered and died. The last thing he saw was Doom sitting back down on his throne, picking up his datapad and resuming his work. The first battle was over. The Imperium had sent its guard, its priests, and its angels. All had failed, but Doom knew this was only the opening move. The galaxy was vast, and its horrors were infinite. He checked the monitors. A new signal was blinking. Something biological, something hungry. Tyranids, Doom whispered, recognizing the biosignature from the archives he had stolen from Varnek's ship. Excellent. I need samples. The conquest had begun, but so had the war for survival. The silence of the station was gone, replaced by the humming of great machines building a new order. A Latverian order. The shadow in the warp did not arrive as a noise. It arrived as a pressure. It was the sensation of being deep underwater, where the light is gone and the weight of the ocean pushes against the eardrums. On the surface of Hestia, the silence that Doom had enforced was replaced by a dull, throbbing headache that afflicted every living human. The few remaining sanctioned psychers in the hiding cells of the Magistratum did not survive the first hour. Their minds, already frayed by fear, simply collapsed under the static of a billion alien thoughts. They clawed at the stone walls until their fingers broke, screaming that the Devourer was here. Then they died. Victor von Doom stood on the observation deck of his fortress. He looked at the bioscan monitors. They were flashing red. The perfect green sphere of order he had established around the system was flickering. The geometric lattice was being gnawed at. He was not facing a strategic opponent. He was facing a biological tide. The Hive Fleet Splinter, a tendril of Hive Fleet Leviathan, had changed course. It had smelled the sudden concentration of organized biomass. It had smelled the energy output of the fortress. It came not to conquer, but to eat. Doom adjusted his gauntlets. He spoke to the air. System diagnostics. The Doombot AI responded instantly. Energy shields at 94%. Atmospheric contaminants detected. Spore density increasing. Estimated time to planetary fall, 10 minutes. Doom nodded. He did not feel fear. He felt contempt. The Tyranids were a biological error. They were life without purpose, consumption without creation. They were the ultimate disorder. On the ground, General Havelock stood in the mud. He had been given his rank back, but not his authority. Doom had returned the lasguns to the surviving 3 regiments of the Hestian PDF. The weapons had been cleaned. The power packs had been recharged to full capacity. The men stood in the trenches they had dug days ago, but now they stood next to silver machines. For every 10 human soldiers, there was one Doombot. The machines stood perfectly still, their green optical sensors scanning the clouds. Havelock looked to the sky. It was no longer blue. It was bruised purple and sick yellow. Clouds of spores were entering the atmosphere, burning as they fell. They looked like a rain of blood. Havelock checked his bolt pistol. He looked to the soldier next to him. It was a young boy, barely 18, shaking so hard his canteen rattled against his belt. "Steady," Havelock said. His voice was rough. "We fight for our home." The boy looked at him. "We fight for the metal man," the boy whispered. "We fight to live," Havelock corrected. The first mycetic spore slammed into the earth 3 miles away. It was the size of a drop pod, but made of meat and bone. It burst open with a wet, tearing sound. Steam hissed from the impact crater. Then the screaming started. It was not a battle cry. It was a high-pitched chittering, the sound of insects magnified 1,000 times. From the crater poured the gaunts. They were red and black, a river of chitin and claws. They did not form ranks. They did not scout. They ran. They ran with a speed that defied their biology. Within seconds, 1,000 of them were sprinting across the open fields of wheat that Doom had so carefully genetically engineered. "Open fire," Havelock roared. The PDF opened up. Thousands of last bolts flashed across the field. The air smelled of ozone. The front rank of the Tyranids disintegrated. Burning flesh tumbled into the dirt. But the ones behind them did not slow down. They trampled the bodies of their kin. They vaulted over the burning piles. The Doombots fired next. Their weapons were not lasguns. They were plasma casters and photonic beams. The accuracy was absolute. Every shot was a kill. A Doombot would fire, shift its aim 3 degrees, and fire again. Heads exploded. Limbs were severed. The efficiency was beautiful. But it was not enough. Doom watched the battle from his throne room. He saw the kill counters rising. 5,000 dead Xenos, 10,000, 50,000. The numbers were meaningless. The swarm was not an army. It was a liquid. You could not shoot a tidal wave. You had to build a dam. He tapped a rune on his chair. "Deploy the heavy assets," Doom commanded. In the stasis labs beneath the fortress, the eyes of Captain Karras snapped open. He was still in his armor, but the armor had changed. The black ceramite of the iron hands had been reinforced with silver plating. Green circuitry pulsed through the joints. Doom had not just repaired the captain. He had optimized him. He had removed the limiters on the nervous system. He had overridden the pain receptors. He had installed a slave protocol in the machine spirit of the armor. Karras tried to speak. He tried to curse the heretic who held him, but his vocal cords did not obey his will. His body stood up. It grabbed a heavy bolter that had been modified to fire micro-explosive rounds. It marched to the teleportation pad. Karras was a passenger in his own body. He screamed silently in the prison of his mind. Karras materialized on the front line. The teleport flare blinded the nearby PDF troopers, the iron hands. Captain did not pause. He racked the slide of the heavy bolter. The weapon roared. The explosive shells tore into the Tyranid horde. Unlike the Doombots, Karras fought with the brutal instinct of a veteran Astartes. He knew where the swarm would bunch up. He knew to target the larger warrior forms that directed the smaller beasts. The Tyranids adapted. This was their greatest weapon. The first wave of gaunts had died to energy fire. The second wave had evolved. Their carapaces were coated in a mucus slime that refracted heat. The PDF last bolts splashed off them harmlessly. The Doombot plasma beams burned through, but took half a second longer. In that half second, the swarm closed the distance. They hit the trench line. It was a massacre. The Tyranids did not fight like men. They leaped into the trenches, slashing with scything talons. Guardsmen were cut in half before they could scream. The morale broke instantly. Men threw down their guns and tried to run. The Tyranids pounced on their backs. They did not kill cleanly. They ripped throats. They ate while the victim was still trashing. The Doombots did not panic. They switched to melee mode. Energy blades sprang from their wrists. They fought with cold mechanical logic. A Doombot would block a claw, sever the limb, and stab the alien through the brain. But for every alien they killed, 3 more grappled them. The metal of the robots groaned as acidic saliva dripped onto their joints. General Havelock fired his pistol until it clicked dry. A Tyranid warrior, twice the size of a man, loomed over him. It raised a bone sword. Havelock drew his combat knife. He knew it was useless. He prepared to die. A green blur slammed into the warrior. It was Karas. The Space Marine used the heavy bolter as a club. He smashed the alien skull. Brain matter sprayed over Havelock. Karas spun, his servo arm grabbing another gaunt and crushing it. "Hold the line," Karas's helmet speaker boomed. It was his voice, but the intonation was Doom's. Retreat is inefficient. The presence of the Space Marine anchored the line for a moment, but the sky was darkening further. The ground shook. A massive spore sack landed behind the trench lines, crushing a lemon rust tank flat. From the wreckage rose a Carnifex. It was a living tank, covered in barnacles of chitin, roaring with a sound that shattered glass. Doom stood up from his throne. The simulation in his mind had reached the conclusion. Conventional victory was impossible. The biomass of the enemy exceeded his ammunition reserves. If he continued to trade fire, he would run out of energy before they ran out of blood. He needed to change the rules of the engagement. He looked at the captured Muggles. Varnak, the tech priest, was wired into a logic engine in the corner of the room. He was currently processing agricultural data. Doom walked over to him. He ripped the data cable from Varnak's skull. "Magos," Doom said, "you worship the motive force. You believe that knowledge is power." Varnak twitched. His optical sensors focused. "You are an abomination." "I am a pragmatist," Doom replied. "The Tyranids are susceptible to synaptic backlash. Their hive mind is a radio signal. I intend to jam it." "You cannot jam the shadow," Varnak hissed. "It is the absence of the warp." "No," Doom said. "It is a frequency. And every frequency can be overwhelmed if the broadcast is loud enough." Doom dragged Varnak to the central console. He accessed the reactor core of the fortress. He also accessed the warp drives of the captured Mechanicus cruiser docked above. He began to merge the systems. He was creating a feedback loop. He was going to turn the entire fortress into a psychic scream. But he needed a lens. He needed a soul strong enough to channel the energy without burning out instantly. He did not have a psyker, but he had a machine spirit. Doom keyed the command to the Doombots on the surface. "Protect the array. I require 5 minutes." On the surface, the line was collapsing. The Carnifex charged. Karas intercepted it. The Space Marine and the Bio-Beast collided with the force of a train wreck. Karas was strong, but the Carnifex weighed 10 tons. It drove him back, its massive claws tearing at his armor. Karas locked his boots magnetically to the ground. He held the beast's claws back. His servos whined, screaming in protest. The red warning runes in his helmet blazed, structural integrity failing. Doombots poured fire into the Carnifex's face. It ignored them. It wanted the Astartes' meat. It bit down on Karas's shoulder, crushing the pauldrons. Karas grunted. Doom's voice cut into Karas's mind. "Captain, activate the overload protocols in your reactor backpack. Karras's mind rebelled. That is suicide. It is a tactical necessity, Doom replied. Do it. The slave protocol overrode Karras's hesitation. He keyed the rune. The fusion pack on his back began to glow white-hot. Karras released his magnetic locks. He drove his body forward, jamming himself into the Carnifex's exposed ribcage. The explosion was small but concentrated. It was a miniature sun. The Carnifex was blown apart from the inside. Karras was thrown backward, his armor blackened, his organic limbs cooked inside the ceramite. He was alive, but barely. He lay in the mud, smoke rising from his chest. The explosion bought them time. But the hive mind was angry now. The sky turned black as millions of gargoyles descended. In the fortress, Doom finished his calculations. He placed his hands on the console. He did not use technology alone. He began to chant. It was not a prayer to the chaos gods. It was a formula of high magic learned from the monks of Tibet and the libraries of hell. He was weaving magic into the binary code of the reactor. He grabbed Varnak. He plugged the tech priest directly into the core. Varnak screamed as the pure energy of the reactor flowed through his cybernetics. Doom used the priest as a fuse. The broadcast began. It was not sound. It was a signal of pure, unadulterated order. It was a mathematical constant forced upon a biological chaos. It blasted out from the fortress, expanding in a green shockwave. When the wave hit the Tyranids, they stopped. The synaptic link between the synapse creatures and the lesser beasts was not just severed, it was replaced. For 1 second, the Tyranids received a command that was alien to their biology. The command was, halt. The gaunts froze in mid-stride. The warriors clutched their heads, their alien brains boiling. The gargoyles fell from the sky like stones. The shadow in the warp shattered. The psychic pressure on the planet lifted instantly. Doom did not celebrate. He capitalized. All units, Doom commanded, execute. The Doombots advanced. They walked up to the frozen Tyranids and executed them point blank. It was industrial slaughter. General Havelock, seeing the monsters paralyzed, rallied his men. With a scream of rage and relief, the guardsmen charged. They bayoneted the stationary gaunts. They poured last fire into the unmoving warriors. The paralysis lasted only 3 minutes. The hive mind was vast. It would adapt. It would re-establish control. But 3 minutes was enough. The momentum of the assault was broken. The biomass that had landed was dead. Doom cut the connection. Varnak slumped to the floor, smoke pouring from his eyes. He was alive, but his logic cores were fried. He was drooling binary nonsense. Doom walked to the window. The Tyranid ships in orbit were turning away. They had tasted the poison of the signal. They realized that this prey was not soft biomass. It was hard, sharp, and tasted of metal. The Hive fleet calculated that the caloric cost of conquering this world exceeded the biomass they would gain. They did what Tyranids always do when the math is bad. They left. The victory was absolute, but the cost was visible. Doom looked at the fields below. The wheat was gone. The land was churned into mud and alien gore. The corpses of thousands of guardsmen lay in the sludge. The atmosphere was tainted with spores that would take decades to filter out. He had saved the world, but he had lost the harvest. Havelock entered the throne room an hour later. He was covered in green blood and mud. He limped. He held his helmet in his hands. He looked at Doom, who was sitting on his throne, reviewing damage reports. "We won," Havelock said. He sounded hollow. "We survived," Doom corrected. "There is a difference." Havelock looked at the Doombots clearing the bodies. They were tossing guardsmen and Tyranids into the same incinerators. Biomass was biomass to the recyclers. "My men." Havelock started, then stopped. He saw the logic. He hated it. Your men fought adequately, Doom said. They will be memorialized. Their families will receive extra rations. Havelock looked at the metal mask. He realized then that Doom was not a savior. He was a force of nature. He was no different than the storm or the drought. Only he could be talked to. What now? Havelock asked. Now, Doom said, standing up. We rebuild. The Tyranids have shown me a flaw in my defense. The flesh is too weak. The metal is too expensive. I need something in between. Doom brought up a holographic schematic. It was a gene helix. It was the genetic code of the Space Marine, Karas. But Doom was splicing it. He was adding the regenerative sequences he had isolated from the Tyranid DNA. The Imperium calls this heresy, Doom said. I call it evolution. He looked at Havelock. Prepare the population, General. The recruitment trials begin tomorrow. I will build a legion that does not break. Havelock felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. He saluted. He turned and left. Doom remained alone. He looked at the stars. The Hive fleet was moving on, but the galaxy was watching now. The signal he had sent out, the burst of order, would have been detected, not just by the Tyranids, but by things much older. In the warp, eyes that were not eyes opened. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, paused his great game. He saw the green thread of probability snap into a straight line. He was intrigued. On the forge world of Mars, deep in the data vaults, a warning rune lit up. It was an ancient code dating back to the dark age of technology. It signaled the activation of a weapon that should not exist. And on the flagship of the Indomitus Crusade, a message arrived for Roboute Guilliman. It was short. It was impossible. It was a demand for a parley, signed by the ruler of the Hestia system. Doom turned back to his work. The first catastrophe was over. The chain reaction had just begun. He picked up his soldering iron. He had a captain to repair. And this time, he would make sure the loyalty subroutines were foolproof. The transformation of the Hestia system from a backwater agricultural hub into a fortress of industrial heresy did not happen in secret. It happened with the brazen volume of a factory whistle blowing across the void. Following the repulsion of the Tyranid splinter fleet, Victor von Doom did not hide his capabilities. He accelerated them. The harvest was lost, so he synthesized food. The population was decimated, so he optimized the survivors. The Imperium had failed them, so he replaced the Imperium. The most significant strategic development occurred in the genital vaults beneath the capital city. Here, Doom worked with the stolen gene seed of the Iron Hands and the biological slurry of the slain Tyranids. To a loyalist apothecary, this was the ultimate blasphemy. To a homunculus of the Dark Eldar, it would be crude art. To Doom, it was an engineering solution to a hardware problem. The Space Marine physiology was resilient, but it relied on organ redundancy. If a heart failed, a second took over. Doom viewed this as inefficient. Why have a backup that sits idle? Why not have a system that repairs the primary instantly? Subject Zero lay on the operating table. It was Captain Karas. His consciousness had been suppressed, locked behind a firewall of command protocols. But he was aware. He felt the cold scalpels of the Doombots peeling back his fused ribcage. He felt the viral strain being injected into his black carapace. It was a modified Tyranid growth hormone, stripped of the hive mind's psychic receptor, but retaining the rapid cellular mitosis. Doom stood over him. The dictator monitored the rejection rates on a holographic display. The Iron Hands' own biology fought the alien cells. The machine spirits of Karas's bionics tried to purge the biological intruder. Doom overrode them all. He forced the flesh to accept the change. He wove spells of binding into the DNA itself, mixing science with the dark arts he had learned from his mother's soul. The integration stabilized. Karis's wounds from the Carnifex battle closed in seconds. The scar tissue did not form. The skin knit together, pink and fresh, then hardened into a callus that was as tough as chitin. Doom leaned in. "Wake up, Zero," Doom commanded. Karis opened his eyes. The display in his helmet booted up. It did not show the Aquila. It showed the green seal of Latveria. He tried to summon his rage, the righteous hatred of the Astartes. He found the emotion was there, but it was disconnected from his motor functions. He was a passenger in a vehicle driven by Doom. "Status," Doom asked. "Optimal," Karis's voice replied. It was his voice, but flat, stripped of the Iron Hand's Dawa intonation. Tissue regeneration at 400% of Astartes standard. Bionic integration seamless. Awaiting orders. Doom nodded. He had created a hybrid, a warrior with the discipline of the Astartes, the durability of the Necron, and the adaptability of the Tyranid. He would not need thousands of them. 100 would be enough to hold the sector. But holding the sector was no longer the primary concern. The burst of order Doom had used to silence the Tyranids, the Hestian signal, had echoed through the Imperium. It had washed over the nearby systems like a tsunami of static. In the subsector of Throsis, 3 light-years away, the signal struck a dead moon. Throsis IV was a barren rock, listed in Imperial charts as a mining quarantine zone due to radiation. In reality, it was a tomb world of the Subakar dynasty, a minor vassal of the great silent king. The Necrons slumbered deep beneath the crust, waiting for the Great Awakening. They were not scheduled to wake for another millennium, but Doom's signal was a harmonic frequency that matched their resurrection protocols. It mimicked the command carrier wave of a Pharaon. The stasis crypts opened. Dust that had settled for 60 million years was disturbed. Green lights flickered on in the darkness. Canoptek scarabs scurried from the walls, repairing the rusted joints of immortals. At the center of the complex, Overlord Kemset rose from his sarcophagus. Kemset was old, even by Necron standards. His engrams were degraded. He remembered the war in heaven, but the memories were fragmented, like corrupted data files. He checked his internal chronometer. It was wrong. He checked the stellar alignment. It was wrong. He scanned for the signal that had woken him. It came from Hestia. It was a crude, barbaric imitation of Necron pylon technology. Someone was playing with the fundamental constants of the universe, and they were doing it with the clumsiness of an infant hammering on a nuclear warhead. Kemset felt a cold spark of indignation in his flux core. The lower races were forbidden from tampering with reality. That was the privilege of the Necrons. He grabbed his Warsith. He accessed the tomb's command node. "Mobilize the fleet," Kemset commanded. "We go to punish the children." The arrival of the Necron fleet in the Hestia system was not detected by conventional augurs until it was too late. Necron ships did not use the warp. They used inertialess drives, slicing through real space at speeds that made physics weep. One moment, the space above Hestia was empty. The next, 3 Cairn-class tomb ships hung in orbit, their crescent hulls blocking out the sun. The Hestian orbital defense grid, which Doom had upgraded with captured Mechanicus Lance batteries, opened fire immediately. The lasers struck the Necron shields and vanished. The tomb ships did not return fire. They simply broadcast a message. It was not audio. It was a data packet forced into every computer system on the planet. "Cease," the message read, "or be erased." Doom sat in his throne room. The screens showed the alien armada. He recognized the design. He had studied the archives of the captured Mechanicus ship. These were the Necrons, the ancient rulers of the galaxy, the masters of the material realm. Doom stood up. He adjusted his cloak. He did not order a counterattack. He knew that in a direct void war, his captured Imperial cruisers would be vaporized in minutes. He had to fight on a battlefield where he had the advantage. He had to fight with his mind. He opened a comms channel. He broadcasted on the specific sub-frequency the Necrons used for command protocols. "I am Victor von Doom," he spoke, "ruler of Latveria and Hestia. You are trespassing in my sovereign space. Identify yourself." There was a pause. The audacity of a biological creature making demands stunned the Necron logic engines. Then, the face of Overlord Kemset appeared on the main screen. His metal skull was ornate, decorated with gold death mask tooling. His eyes burned with soulless green fire. "You are the source of the noise," Kemset said. His voice sounded like grinding stones. "You are a flesh sack wrapped in crude iron. You have touched the underlying math of the cosmos. You have awoken us. For this insult I shall flay the atoms from your bones." "You are premature," Doom replied smoothly. "I did not wake you to insult you. I woke you because I required a peer." The Overlord hesitated. The concept of a human peer was laughable, yet the human spoke High Gothic with a syntax that was mathematically perfect, and he was broadcasting on a closed Necron channel. "You have no peers," Kemset sneered. "You are dust. I am the one who silenced the Great Devourer," Doom countered. "I am the one who brought order to this chaotic sector. Look at my world, Overlord. Look at the grid." Doom transmitted the sensor data of the planetary shield he had erected. It was not a void shield. It was a geometric lattice, stabilized by the same pylon tech principles the Necrons used. It was primitive compared to the Cadian pylons, but the theory was identical. Kemset analyzed the data. His aggression subroutines paused. The human was using their science. This was heresy, but it was also intriguing. If a human could understand the pylons, perhaps he possessed data that the degraded memory banks of the tomb world had lost. "I will descend," Kemset announced. "I will inspect your work. If it is flawed, I will kill you. If it is stolen, I will kill you." "Excellent," Doom said. "I shall prepare a reception." The meeting took place on the landing platform of the Sky Spire, the tallest tower of Doom's fortress. The wind whipped at Doom's green cloak. He stood alone, save for two guards. One was a standard Doom bot. The other was Subject Zero, Captain Karras. Karras stood motionless, his heavy bolter mag-locked to his hip. He wore no helmet. His face was a patchwork of scar tissue and silver plating. His eyes tracked the incoming transport. The Necron Night Scythe swept down silently. A green portal opened in its hull. Overlord Kemset stepped out, flanked by 5 Lich Guard carrying hyperphase shields and swords. The Necrons were tall, skeletal giants of living metal. They moved with a synchronized grace that made the Astartes look clumsy. Kemset stopped 10 meters from Doom. He looked down at the human. "You wear a mask," Kemset said, "to hide the decay of your flesh, to reflect the face of authority," Doom replied. He did not bow. Kemset gestured to the city below. "You build in stone and steel, archaic. You use fusion power, quaint. But the shield is interesting. Where did you find the schematics?" "I derived them," Doom lied. He had stolen the basic theory from the Mechanicus archives and extrapolated the rest. But he knew the Necrons respected intellect. "I observed the stability of the Cadian gate before it fell. I calculated the resonance frequency required to repel the warp. It is simple harmonic physics." "Simple?" Kemset scoffed. It took my kind 1,000,000 years to perfect the null field. You claim to have solved it in a month? I am not your kind, Doom said. I am better. The Lich Guard stepped forward, blades humming. Kemset held up a hand. Arrogance, the Overlord mused. A trait we share. But arrogance requires power to back it up. You have one fortress. I have a fleet that can snuff out your sun. Why should I not reclaim this sector for the Subekar dynasty right now? Because I can fix you, Doom said. The silence that followed was heavy. Kemset froze. The Lich Guard froze. Explain, the Overlord commanded. Doom walked forward. He tapped his gauntlet. A hologram appeared between them. It showed a double helix of Necron code. It was the logic structure of their minds. I have analyzed your transmission signals, Doom said. I detect a degradation rate of 0.04% per cycle. You call it the Great Sleep Sickness. You are losing your memories. You are losing your personalities. You are becoming automatons. It is the curse of time, Kemset said, his voice lowering. It is inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Doom snapped. It is a coding error, a fragmentation of the engrammatic buffer. You are running on hardware that has not been defragmented in 60 million years. Doom manipulated the hologram. He moved blocks of code. He bridged gaps. I have experience with artificial intelligence. I have built minds from scratch. I can patch your engrams. I can restore the memories you have lost. Kemset stared at the hologram. He saw the logic. It was sound. This primitive organic had seen the flaw that the cryptex of his court had ignored or failed to fix. The offer was staggering. To regain the clarity of the war in heaven, to remember the face of the Silent King clearly. And the price? Kemset asked. A trade, Doom said. I repair your mind. You give me the Blackstone required to expand my shield grid, and you recognize Hestia as a sovereign entity, allied but independent. Kemset processed the offer. It was a humiliating concession to a lower life form, but the reward was existential. The Necrons feared nothing but the loss of self. Agreed, Kemset said. But if you damage my mind, I will trap your soul in a tesseract labyrinth and torture it for eternity. I would expect nothing less, Doom said. As they spoke, a shadow moved on the adjacent spire. It was not a cloud. It was a distortion in the light. A Vindicare assassin, dispatched by the Officio Assassinorum 3 weeks prior, had finally found his angle. The assassin, known only as V9, lay prone on the cooling vents of the reactor. He looked through his scope. The mission parameters had changed. The target was no longer just the heretic Doom. It was now a Xenos collaboration. V9 adjusted his aim. He loaded a turbo penetrator round. He targeted Doom's head. He slowed his heartbeat to once per minute. He fired. The bullet left the barrel at hypersonic speed. It was designed to punch through force fields and ceramite. It crossed the distance between the spires in a fraction of a second. It did not hit Doom. Captain Karras moved. The sensory enhancements Doom had installed, the Tyranid reflex speed, reacted before the conscious mind could process the threat. Karras stepped in front of his master. He raised his left hand. It was the bionic hand, reinforced with the new alloy. The bullet struck the palm. It shattered the metal, blew through the wrist, and lodged in Karras's chest plate. The impact knocked the Space Marine backward, but he did not fall. Doom turned instantly. He traced the trajectory. He raised his hand. A blast of green magic energy destroyed the cooling vent on the far spire. The Vindicare assassin was incinerated before he could cycle the bolt for a second shot. Doom turned back to Kemset. The Necron overlord was watching Karras. Your servant is damaged, Kemset noted. He is durable, Doom said. He walked over to Karras. He looked at the shattered hand. "Report," Doom said. "Combat efficiency reduced by 12%. Karras rasped. "Target neutralized." Doom looked at Kemsit. "The Imperium," Doom said, gesturing to the burning spire. "They try to kill what they do not understand. They would rather see this galaxy burn than see it ordered by someone else. They are your enemy as much as mine." Kemsit nodded slowly. He respected durability. He respected the survival instinct, and he hated the Imperium for their constant encroachment on his tomb worlds. "The deal stands," Kemsit said. "Come to my ship. Bring your tools, we shall begin the repairs." The alliance was sealed not in ink, but in shared disdain for the chaotic humanity of Terra. Over the next month, Hestia changed again. Necron Canoptech wraiths worked alongside Doombots. They mined the deep crust of the planet, extracting rare minerals that the Imperium didn't even know existed. In return, Doom spent hours connected to the mind circuitry of Overlord Kemsit. He was as good as his word. He located the corrupted sectors of Kemsit's memory. He defragmented them. He isolated the viral logic loops that caused madness. He did not fix everything. He left backdoors in the code, subtle command strings that would allow him to shut down Kemsit if the Overlord ever betrayed him, but he restored Kemsit's clarity. The Overlord woke from the procedure remembering the exact shade of the sun on his homeworld before the biotransference. He looked at Doom with a new emotion. Gratitude, or as close as a Necron could get. "You are a sorcerer of code," Kemsit admitted. "I'm a doctor," Doom replied. With the alliance secured, the strategic map shifted. The Necrons provided raw blackstone, noctilith. Doom used it to amplify his order signal. He did not just cover the system. He created a zone of silence that spanned 3 light years. Within this zone, the warp was calm. Demons could not manifest. Psychers could not tap into their powers without burning out. Astropathic communication was impossible. This was the chain reaction. The Imperium relied on the warp. Their ships traveled through it. Their messages traveled through it. By calming the warp, Doom had effectively blinded the Imperium in this sector. Ships dropped out of warp travel miles away from the system, their navigators unable to see the beacon of the Astronomicon through the flatness of Doom space. Merchant fleets stranded, patrol cruisers drifting. They were easy pickings for the Necron harvest ships and Doom's boarding parties. But silence is loud. The lack of warp activity was a black hole on the psychic maps of the galaxy. On the Forge world of Mars, Archmagos Call paused his work on the Primaris project. He looked at the data coming from the Hestia sector. An artificial calm, Call buzzed. A null zone created not by natural evolution, but by technological intervention. And the signature, it combines Necron harmonics with Golden Age human coding. Call was not angry. He was jealous. He immediately ordered an expeditionary force. He would not send Skitarii. He would go himself. He wanted to meet this innovator. Farther away, within the Indomitus Crusade fleet, Roboute, Guilliman, stood on the bridge of the Macragger's honor. The Primarch looked at the tactical map. The Hestia sector was a blank spot. Reports of a Silver King and green magic were filtering in from refugees. The Tyranids were repelled, Guilliman noted, not by force of arms, but by a signal. And now, the warp is still. This is not chaos. Chaos screams. This is silence. "It is the Necrons, my lord," a tribune suggested. "Perhaps," Guilliman said. "But Necrons do not synthesize food for human populations, and they do not recruit PDF regiments. This is something else." Guilliman looked at his hands. He was overwhelmed. The galaxy was splitting apart. Mortarion was attacking Ultramar. The Pariah Nexus was growing. He did not have the resources to deal with a rogue warlord in a minor agricultural system. Mark it as a secondary threat, Guilliman ordered. Send an envoy, an inquisitor, someone who can think. I want to know if this Dr. Doom can be reasoned with. If he can stabilize the warp, he might be an asset, or he might be a threat greater than Abaddon. The order was given. Inquisitor Lord Cryptman, the man who had ordered the death of worlds to starve the Tyranids, received the communique. He was a radical. He believed in extreme measures. He read the file on Hestia. He stopped Leviathan without firing a shot. Cryptman whispered, I must have this weapon. Back on Hestia, Doom stood on the balcony of his completed citadel. The sky was a shimmering grid of green energy. Below, the factories churned. The 1st Regiment of the Iron Guard, human soldiers equipped with carapace armor and Gauss flare rifles gifted by the Necrons, marched in perfect unison. Captain Karras stood behind him. The fleet sensors detect an Imperial vessel dropping from real space, Karras reported. It is an inquisitorial black ship. Let them land, Doom said. The stage is set. We have the technology. We have the army. Now we need legitimacy. Legitimacy, Karras asked. They will call us heretics. They will call us necessary, Doom said. Or they will die. He turned back to the datapad. He was designing a new mask, one that incorporated the Blackstone fragments. If he was going to face the psychic might of the Imperium, he needed to be immune to their witch fire. The chain reaction was complete. Doom had not just conquered a world, he had changed the physics of the local cluster. He had forced the major players to look at him. Now, he had to survive their gaze. Prepare the banquet hall, Doom ordered. We have guests. The Doombot scurried to obey. Karras remained still. He felt a phantom itch in his missing hand. He wondered if the Inquisitor would bring the Emperor's mercy. He found, to his horror, that he hoped not. He wanted to see what Doom would do next. The curiosity was the only part of him that felt free. Inquisitor Lord Cryptman did not arrive with an army. He arrived with a question. The black ship. The light of judgment docked at the high anchor spire of Doom's citadel, a needle of Gothic obsidian piercing the green sky. Cryptman was an old man, his skin like parchment stretched over a skull, kept alive by juvenile treatments and sheer cold will. He had burned 1,000 worlds to stop the Tyranid advance. He was a monster in the name of survival, and he recognized the scent of another. He descended the ramp with a small retinue. 2 Deathwatch Space Marines from the Ultramarines and Mortifactors chapters, a mute blank sister to dampen psychic threats, and a servo skull recording every microsecond. They expected traps. They expected heresy. What they found was efficiency. The docking bay was clean. Servitors moved with optimized subroutines, loading crates of the synthetic nutrient paste Doom had invented. They were shipping it to the starving hive worlds in the neighboring subsector. Cryptman noted the markings on the crates. Aid from Hestia, the tithe of order. This is a bribe the Ultramarine, Brother Titus muttered. He buys the loyalty of the hungry. It is logistics, Cryptman corrected quietly, and it is working. They were escorted not by robots, but by the Iron Guard. These were men and women of Hestia, clad in carapace armor that combined Imperial flak weave with Necron alloy plating. They held their Gauss pattern La rifles at port arms. Their eyes were clear. They did not look like cultists. They looked like professional soldiers. They were led to the Great Hall. Doom sat at the head of a long table made of black stone. Captain Karras stood at his right hand, a silent giant in silver-black armor. Overlord Kemsit stood to the left, his metal skeleton draped in a cloak of red velvet. The presence of the Xenos made the Deathwatch Marines tense. their bolters raised instinctively. "Hold," Kripman ordered. He looked at Doom. "You keep strange company, Governor." "I keep capable company," Doom replied. His voice echoed from his mask, smooth and imperious. "Sit, Inquisitor. We have much to discuss." Kripman sat. He did not eat the food placed before him. He placed his hands on the table. "You are Victor von Doom," Kripman said. "A name not found in the Administratum records. You have seized an imperial world. You have halted the tide. You consort with Xenos, and you have unsanctioned technology. By every law of the Lex Imperialis, I should declare exterminatus on this rock. And yet," Doom said, leaning forward, "you are here, because you saw the data." "I saw the Tyranids turn away," Kripman admitted. "I saw the shadow in the warp dissipate. You did something impossible. You weaponized order." "I simply applied a correction," Doom said. "The Imperium fights chaos with faith. Faith is variable. Math is constant. I built a signal that enforces the laws of physics. The warp cannot exist where reality is absolute. The Tyranids cannot coordinate where the synaptic web is jammed." Kripman's eyes narrowed. "Show me the device." "I will not," Doom said. "It is integrated into the core of my citadel. It is mine." "Then you leave me no choice," Kripman said. He reached for his rosette. "A choice is exactly what I'm offering," Doom interrupted. He pressed a button on the table. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared. "The Great Rift," Doom said, pointing to the scar tearing the galaxy apart. "It grows. Your Emperor is a lighthouse, but the fog is getting thicker. You are losing. You are burning worlds to save a few. You, Kripman. You exterminated the worlds of the Cordon to starve the beast. A ruthless calculus. I admire it." Kripman did not flinch. It was necessary. "It was wasteful," Doom corrected. "You destroyed resources. I preserved them. My signal can be expanded. With the Necron pylons and my technology, I can create a chain of stable space, a corridor of silence through the rift, a safe passage for your fleets, a zone where demons cannot manifest." Kripman stared at the map. The strategic implication was staggering. A stable route through the cicatrix maledictum. It would allow the Indomitus Crusade to reconnect the two halves of the Imperium. It would save trillions of lives. "The price?" Kripman asked. "Autonomy," Doom said. "Hestia and the surrounding systems are mine. No tithes, no ecclesiarchy, no inquisition. I rule as I see fit, and I will provide you with the technology to build the pylon nodes elsewhere." "You want to secede," Kripman said. "I want to lead," Doom corrected. "The Imperium is a rotting carcass. I am cutting away the gangrene." The Death Watch Marine Titus slammed his fist on the table. "Heresy. You speak treason in front of the Emperor's chosen. We will not barter with a tyrant." Kripman held up a hand. "Quiet, brother." He looked at Doom. The offer was the ultimate temptation. Victory, but at the cost of the soul of the Imperium. To accept was to admit that the Emperor's way was insufficient. "I cannot grant you autonomy," Kripman said. "Only the High Lords can do that, and they will never agree. They will send the entire Navy to crush you." "Let them come," Overlord Kemset spoke for the first time. His voice was a grinder of gravel. "My fleet is awakening. The Silent King watches. We will defend this sector." Kripman looked at the Necron. A formal alliance between a human warlord and the Necrons. It was a nightmare scenario. But if they fought, the order signal would likely be destroyed. The secret to stopping the Tyranids would be lost. Kripman made his choice. It was a small choice, a delay, a tactical retreat disguised as diplomacy. But it would have massive outcomes. "I will take your proposal to Guilliman," Kripman said. "I will present the data. Until then, I declare this system under inquisitorial quarantine. No ships enter or leave without my clearance. We will observe. Doom nodded. He knew what observe meant. It meant they would look for a weakness. It meant they would send assassins. It meant they were buying time. Agreed, Doom said. But do not take too long, Inquisitor. The galaxy does not wait for bureaucracy. Krypton stood up. He signaled his retinue. They turned to leave. As they reached the door, Krypton paused. One question, Doom. What happens to the people who do not fit into your order? The ones who dream? The ones who pray? Doom looked at him. His mask was unreadable. They learn to work, Doom said. Or they are recycled. Krypton left. The airlock hissed shut. The small choice had been made. Krypton did not order the exterminatus. He chose to carry the message. This choice allowed Doom to continue his work. It gave him the one thing he needed most: time. In the weeks that followed, Doom did not rest. He knew the Imperium would return with fire. He needed to secure his flank. The Necrons were allies, but they were transactional. He needed something that belonged only to him. He went to the dungeons. Deep beneath the citadel, in a cell lined with hexagrammatic wards, a creature was held. It was not a man. It was a demon host. Doom had captured it during the initial warp silencing. The demon was weak, starved by the lack of warp energy, trapped in the body of a screaming psyker. Doom entered the cell. The air was cold. Frost covered the walls. The demon looked up. Its eyes were black pits. You. The smell of order. It burns, the demon hissed. I have a job for you, Doom said. I serve. The changer of ways. I do not serve. Mortals, the demon spat. Doom walked closer. He removed his gauntlet. His hand crackled with green energy. Not warp energy, but magic. The magic of the mystic arts. You misunderstand, Doom said. I am not asking. He placed his hand on the demon host's forehead. He began to chant. He was not exorcising the demon. He was hacking it. He was using the principles of technomancy to rewrite the binding rituals. He was turning the demon into a battery. He dragged the screaming creature to the central power core of the citadel. He shoved it into a containment chamber. He locked the seals. The daemon screamed as the machinery pierced its ethereal form. It tried to draw on the warp, but the pylon grid blocked it. It was trapped. Its infinite energy was siphoned off, converted into pure electricity to power the shield grid. Doom watched the power levels spike to 200%. Chaos is just another resource, Doom muttered. But the act of binding a demon so brutally sent a ripple through the warp that even the zone of silence could not fully hide. It was a specific frequency of agony. And in the eye of terror, Magnus the Red looked up from his book. The demon Primarch of the Thousand Suns felt the disturbance. Someone was using sorcery. Someone was blending it with technology in a way that he had once dreamed of. It was elegant. It was arrogant. A rival, Magnus smiled. His single eye glowed. How delicious. Magnus did not send a fleet. He sent a spell. A ritual of unmaking. He cast it across the galaxy, targeting the specific resonance of Hestia. The spell hit the Hestia system 3 days later. It began as a rain of blue fire. The pylon grid flickered. The order signal wavered. The laws of physics momentarily forgot themselves. Gravity reversed in localized pockets. People fell into the sky. Water turned into blood. Doom stood in the command center. Alarm screamed. Magical attack detected, the computer announced. Source, Prospero Rift. Magnus, Doom recognized the signature. The Cyclops placed his hand. The shield grid was buckling. The Necron pylons were overheating, trying to counter the raw, chaotic energy. Chemset messaged from his ship. The warp storm is increasing. My ships are losing integrity. We must withdraw. Hold your position, Doom commanded. If you leave, the grid fails. It is failing already, Kemset replied. We are creatures of the material. We cannot fight sorcery of this magnitude. Doom realized he could not rely on the Necrons for this. This was a battle of wills, sorcerer against sorcerer. Doom left the command center. He went to the roof of the citadel. The sky was a swirling vortex of blue and pink. Faces laughed in the clouds. Doom raised his hands. He did not use technology. He used the arts he had learned in the mountains of Tibet, the arts he had used to challenge Mephisto. He summoned the crimson bands of Sitarak. Giant red ribbons of energy erupted from the citadel, lashing out at the sky. They wrapped around the tear in reality that Magnus was forcing open. You are strong, a voice boomed from the clouds. It was Magnus. But you are mortal. Your soul is a candle in a hurricane. My soul is diamond, Doom roared. It does not bend. Doom pulled. He used the stolen energy of the demon host battery to amplify his spell. He dragged the tear shut. The struggle was titanic. The stone of the citadel cracked beneath his feet. His armor heated up, burning his skin. But he was losing. Magnus was a Primarch, a being of pure warp stuff. Doom was a man. Then the small choice from Act 3 paid off. Captain Karras, watching from the balcony, saw his master struggling. He saw the logic of the situation. Doom needed more power. Karras looked at the Necron overlord Kemset, who had teleported down to argue for retreat. We need the Black Stone, Karras said to the Necron. The grid is at maximum, Kemset said. We cannot push it further. Not the grid, Karras said. You. Karras raised his heavy bolter. He did not fire at the sky. He fired at Kemset. The explosive rounds caught the overlord off guard. They shattered his ribcage, exposing his flux core. Treachery, Kemset roared. He raised his warsith. Karras dropped his gun. He tackled the Necron. He jammed his bionic hand into the exposed core. Lord Doom, Karras shouted via the Vox. The source. Doom saw it. Karras was acting as a conduit, grounding the Necron's living metal energy. Doom did not hesitate. He extended a magical tether to Karras. He drained the Necron overlord. The energy of a 60-million-year-old being flowed into Doom. It was cold, metallic, and ancient. It mixed with the fire of the demon host. Doom screamed. The power was agonizing, but he controlled it. He channeled it. He fired a beam of pure green-black energy into the sky. It hit Magnus's spell. The blue fire shattered. The vortex collapsed. The sky cleared instantly. On the roof, Karras was thrown back, his arm blown off again. Kemset fell, his glow dim, his body inert. He was not dead, but he was drained to the point of stasis. Doom stood panting. Smoke rose from his armor. He had won. He had banished a Primarch. But the cost was the Alliance. The Necron Lich Guard on the platform went berserk. They charged Doom. Their lord had been betrayed. Doom waved a hand. The exhausted Lich Guard was swept off the roof by a gust of wind. The Alliance is terminated, Doom rasped. Secure the Necron ships. Use the override codes I planted in Kemset's mind. The Doombots enacted the protocols. In orbit, the Necron ships shut down. The crews were locked in stasis loops. Doom had anticipated this betrayal. He had planned for it. The massive outcome of the small choice to keep Karras and upgrade him was this. Doom now possessed a Necron fleet, but he had no allies. He had proven he could stop chaos, but he had made himself a target for every power in the warp. And in the silence that followed, a new message arrived. It was not from the Imperium. It was not from Chaos. It was from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Archimagos Call had arrived. His ship, the Zarquasetta, decloaked. He had watched the battle. He had seen Doom mix sorcery, Necron tech, and Imperial genetics. Most would call it heresy. Call called it progress. He hailed the Citadel. "Dr. Doom," Call's voice chittered. "Your methodology is unorthodox, but effective. We have common interest." Doom looked at the screen. He was exhausted. His armor was damaged. His ally was in a coma. His top general was maimed. "Speak, Martian," Doom said. "The Primarch project requires refinement," Call said. "You have solved the rejection issues I still struggle with. And I have the location of a Blackstone fortress, an intact one. If we combine your signal with that fortress, we could close the Great Rift entirely." Doom paused. Close the rift. It was the ultimate prize. It would bring absolute order to the galaxy. It would make him the savior of mankind. "Come down," Doom said, "but leave your dogma in orbit." The stage was set for the final convergence. The Imperium was watching. Chaos was wounded but angry. The Necrons were neutralized but vengeful. And now, the two greatest scientific minds in the galaxy were about to meet. Doom looked at Karis, who was being attended to by medics. "You did well, Zero," Doom said. "I calculated the odds," Karis grunted. "Loyalty was the most efficient variable." Doom smiled behind his mask. "Precision. I love it." He turned to face the arrival of Call. The end was near. He would either save the universe or rule its ashes. The arrival of Archmagos Belisarius Call on Hestia was not a meeting of minds. It was a collision of egos that generated enough friction to spark a new age of heresy. Call walked through the halls of Doom's citadel, his insectoid legs clicking on the black stone. He scanned the walls. He scanned the Doombots. He scanned the captive demon hosts screaming silently in the reactor core. Every sensor in Call's body was redlining. This was tech heresy of the highest order, yet it functioned with a smoothness that the Mechanicus had not achieved in 10,000 years. Doom awaited him in the strategic separarium. The Latverian dictator stood over a holographic map of the Cicatrix Maledictum. The Great Rift bled purple light across the projection. Carl did not bow. He did not offer the sign of the cog. He simply plugged a mechadendrite into the table's data port. "You used Necron pylon technology to stabilize the Imperium," Call stated. His voice was a chorus of 3 different synthesizers. "But you lack the power generation to scale it. You are using a demon as a battery. It is crude. It is unstable." "It is sufficient for now," Doom replied. He did not look up from the map. "But you did not come here to critique my engineering, Archmagos. You came because you have a Blackstone fortress." "I have the location of one," Call corrected. "A fragment of the fortress Obsidian Sky. It drifts in the void 3 sectors away. If we can tow it here, if we can mount your harmonic emitter onto its amplifier array, we can do more than stabilize a system. We can stitch the wound of the galaxy shut." Doom looked at Call. The metal mask gleamed. "You wish to close the Great Rift," Doom said. "I wish to continue the great work," Call said. "The rift is an error. Errors must be corrected. Roboute Guilliman desires a unified Imperium. This device would give it to him." "And who controls the switch?" Doom asked. Call paused. His optical lenses zoomed in on Doom's face. "Logic dictates that the one who builds it controls it," Call said. "We build it together." Doom smiled behind his mask. He knew Call was a radical, but he also knew the Archmagos was bound by the desire for knowledge. Doom was bound only by his will. "Bring the fortress," Doom said. "We will save your Imperium. And then we will discuss the terms of its gratitude." The recovery of the Obsidian Sky took 3 weeks. It was a massive operation, requiring the combined might of Call's recovery fleet and Doom's captured Necron vessels. When the fortress fragment, a pyramid of black stone the size of a wee continent, entered the Hestia system, the gravitational tides shifted. The tides of the warp shifted too. The sheer presence of that much noctilith pushed the Imperium back. But such a movement could not be hidden. The psychic displacement was a beacon. On the edge of the system, reality tore open. It was not the precise green portal of the Necrons, nor the calculated entry of the Imperial Navy. It was a wound. A warp rift opened, vomiting forth ships of red and gold. The World Eaters had arrived. They were not led by Angron. The demon Primarch was banished elsewhere. They were led by Khan the Betrayer. The greatest mortal champion of Khorne had sensed the silence of Hestia. He hated it. It was a quiet that promised no blood. It was an insult to the Lord of Skulls. At the same time, the long-range augurs screamed. A second fleet was translating from the warp at the Mandeville Point. It was the Macragger's honor. Roboute Guilliman had come to hear the answer to Kryptman's message. The stage was set for a convergence of absolute forces. Doom stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Sky. He was wiring his order signal directly into the fortress's heart. Khor was on the other side of the chamber, fusing the connections with a melter gun. "They are here," Doom said. "Who?" Khor asked. "Everyone," Doom replied. In the void, the battle began instantly. The World Eaters did not hail. They did not strategize. They accelerated. Their ships were covered in spikes and brass, engines burning with souls. They drove straight for the Blackstone fortress. They wanted to smash it. The Imperial fleet, emerging from the warp, found themselves in a crossfire. Guilliman, on his bridge, assessed the situation in microseconds. "Chaos Fleet designated World Eaters," Guilliman announced. "Target priority Alpha. But keep sensors on the planet. I want to know what that fortress is doing." The Imperial Navy engaged the Chaos Fleet. Macro cannons roared. Void shields flared. But the Chaos ships were suicidal. They rammed the Imperial cruisers, boarding torpedoes flying like hail. Doom watched the battle on his screens. "They are distracting us," Doom said. "Khan does not care about the ship. He wants the ground." Drop pods rained down on Hestia, thousands of them. The World Eaters were bypassing the Void War to slaughter the population. They wanted to break Doom's resource base. They wanted to turn his ordered world into a slaughterhouse. "General Havelock," Doom transmitted to the surface. "Defense Plan Omega." "Sir." Havelock's voice was steady. "The Iron Guard is ready." On the surface, the World Eaters landed. Berserkers poured out, chain axes revving. They expected screaming peasants. They found phalanxes of Iron Guard standing behind walls of green energy. The Guard fired their Gauss flares. The green beams stripped the ceramite from the Berserkers' armor, flaying them atom by atom. But the Berserkers did not stop. They ran through the dissolution beams, flesh melting, still swinging their axes. The slaughter was horrific. The Iron Guard discipline held, but they were dying by the hundreds. Doom turned to Khor. "We need to activate the fortress," Doom said. "Now." "The calibration is not complete," Khor protested. "If we fire the pulse now, the radius is unpredictable. We could lobotomize every psyker in the sector." "Acceptable," Doom said. "Not to me," a voice boomed. The blast doors of the command chamber blew inward. Smoke filled the room. Through the haze walked Roboute Guilliman. He was flanked by 10 Victrix Guard and Inquisitor Kryptman. The Primarch was magnificent and terrifying. The hand of Dominion burned with power. The Emperor's sword was drawn, wreathed in holy fire. Guilliman looked at Khor. Then he looked at Doom. "Step away from the console," Guilliman ordered. His voice was not a shout. It was a law of nature. "Lord Guilliman," Khor said, stepping back. "We are attempting to close the rift." I know what you are doing, Belisarius, Guilliman said. I read Cryptman's report. This man does not use the pylons to close the warp. He uses them to impose his own will upon reality. He does not create safety. He creates slavery. Guilliman turned his gaze to Doom. You are Victor von Doom, Guilliman said. I have studied your history from the records you allowed Cryptman to take. You are a tyrant. You believe order is the highest virtue, regardless of the cost to the human spirit. And you are a hypocrite, Doom replied. He did not step back. He adjusted his gauntlets. Green energy crackled around his fingers. You preach freedom, yet you serve a corpse on a throne who demands the daily sacrifice of 1,000 souls. You built an Imperium on fear and ignorance. I offer efficiency. I offer survival. Survival without a soul is death, Guilliman said. You bind demons. You mutilate the gene seed. You consort with Xenos. You are a heretic. I am a scientist, Doom roared, and I have solved the equation you are too afraid to balance. Doom slammed his hand onto the console. Activation. The fortress hummed. A wave of black energy pulsed outward. It passed through the hull. Outside, the World Eater's ships lost power. The demons binding them to the material realm were banished instantly. The ships drifted, dead hulks. But the pulse hit the Imperial fleet too. The navigators screamed as their third eyes were blinded. The astropaths fell into comas. The ships went dark, running only on emergency chemical thrusters. Guilliman felt the wave hit him. It was a pressure on his soul, a demand to submit. He resisted. He was a son of the Emperor. His will was iron. You seek to silence us all, Guilliman said. He charged. The fight between Doom and Guilliman was a clash of eras. Guilliman moved with the transhuman speed of a Primarch, a blur of gold and blue. The Emperor's sword swung, leaving a trail of fire. Doom did not try to match him physically. That would be suicide. Doom used his armored systems. He teleported short distances, blink, 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 dodging the strikes. He fired blasts of magic and plasma. A blast hit Guilliman's breastplate. The Auramite held, but the Primarch staggered. You are slow, Roman, Doom taunted. He cast a spell. The crimson bands of Sitarak materialize, wrapping around Guilliman's arms. Guilliman roared. He pulled. The muscles in his arms bulged. The magical bands groaned, then shattered. A Primarch's strength was an absolute value. Guilliman lunged. He caught Doom by the throat. He lifted the dictator into the air. Your magic is a trick, Guilliman growled. Your technology is stolen. You are a scavenger king. Doom wheezed. His personal force field was buckling under the pressure of the hand of Dominion. Subject Zero, Doom choked out. From the shadows of the ceiling, Captain Karras dropped. The hybrid Astartes had been cloaked. He landed on Guilliman's back. He did not use a weapon. He used his Tyranid-enhanced strength to lock his arms around the Primarch's neck. He drove an injector spike into the soft seal of Guilliman's helmet. It was a neurotoxin synthesized from Tyranid venom. It would not kill a Primarch, but it would slow him down. Guilliman stumbled. He reached back and ripped Karras off his back. He threw the hybrid across the room. Karras hit the wall with a wet crunch, his modified bones shattering. But the distraction was enough. Doom fell to the floor. He gasped, his mask resealing. He looked at the console. The pulse was building to the second stage. This stage would be permanent. It would calcify the sector. It would turn Hestia into a pocket dimension of pure stasis. Call, Guilliman shouted. Disable it. Call looked at the machine. He looked at his Primarch. He looked at the data. The data said the machine would work. It would save the galaxy from chaos. But it would end the Imperium as he knew it. It would replace the Omnissiah with Doom. Call made his choice. He was a servant of Mars first, but he was loyal to the ideal of humanity. Doom was not humanity. Doom was something else. Call extended a mecha dendrite. He did not disable the machine. He overloaded the targeting array. Error, Call said flatly. Targeting solution lost. Omnidirectional discharge imminent. Doom turned to Call. You fool. You'll destroy the fortress. Better destroyed than enslaved, Call said. Doom looked at the readout. The energy was spiraling out of control. The Blackstone fortress was going to detonate. Not a nuclear explosion, but a reality implosion. It would wipe out everything in the immediate vicinity. The fleets, the planet, them. Doom had seconds to think. He could not save the fortress. He could not defeat Guilliman and Call together. He had to save his work. He had to save Hestia. He typed a final command code. He redirected the energy. Instead of a pulse, he inverted the shields. He turned the fortress into a shield generator of impossible magnitude. Get off my ship, Doom said to Guilliman. Surrender, Guilliman said, raising his sword, and I will grant you a swift death. I do not surrender, Doom said, and I do not die. Doom hit the teleport rune, not for himself, for them. The command deck's teleportarium activated. It locked onto Guilliman, his guard, and Call. They were not authorized users, but Doom forced the system. This is not a victory, Doom, Guilliman shouted as his form began to dissolve into light. You are trapping yourself. I am building my kingdom, Doom said. The Imperials vanished. They were beamed back to the McCragger's honor. Doom was alone on the dying fortress. The energy was critical. He looked at Karis, who was broken on the floor. Can you stand, Zero? Doom asked. Karis twitched. His regeneration was already knitting his spine. I stand. Good, Doom said. We are leaving. Doom initiated the separation sequence. The command module of the fortress, a small pyramid at the apex, detached. The rest of the fortress, the massive bulk of black stone, collapsed in on itself. The implosion was silent. A sphere of pure white null energy expanded. It swallowed the World Eater's fleet, racing them from existence. It hit the Imperial fleet, pushing them away with a gravitational wave that hurled them to the edge of the system. And then it settled. The dust cleared. Roboute Guilliman stood on the bridge of his ship. He looked at the tactical screen. Hestia was still there, but it was changed. A barrier of shimmering silver energy surrounded the entire star system. It was not a void shield. It was a solid wall of condensed space-time. The Blackstone explosion had been shaped by Doom's final command. It had created a bubble universe. Status? Guilliman asked. Auspex reads, nothing, the shipmaster reported. We cannot scan through the barrier. We cannot hail them. We cannot fire through it. It is absolute. Call stepped forward. He created a tesseract pocket. The Hestia system has been removed from the standard flow of time. It is effectively quarantined. Guilliman stared at the silver sphere. The Tyranids were gone. The Chaos Fleet was erased. The sector was safe. But it was lost to the Imperium. He won, Kripman whispered. He kept his world. No, Guilliman said. He sheathed the Emperor's sword. He imprisoned himself. He is a king of a cage. Guilliman turned away. Mark the coordinates. Quarantine level extremis. Nothing goes in. Nothing comes out. If the barrier ever falls, we will be waiting. And the rift? Kripman asked. The rift remains, Guilliman said heavy-heartedly. We continue the crusade. We fight for every inch, because that is what we do. We do not hide behind walls. We face the dark. The Imperial fleet turned. They had wars to fight. They left Hestia behind. Inside the bubble, silence reigned. The sky of Hestia was no longer green or blue. It was silver. A perfect mirror-like dome covered the solar system. Doom stood on the balcony of his citadel. The air was clean. The factories were humming. The Iron Guard patrolled the streets. The population was working. Captain Karras limped up behind him. He was healed, but he walked with a heaviness. "We are trapped," Karras said. "We are secure," Doom corrected. He looked to the silver sky. He could see his reflection in it. A giant armored mask looking down on the world. "The Imperium will rot," Doom said. "Chaos will consume them. They will bleed and die in their ignorance. And while they burn, we will perfect ourselves." Doom turned to Karras. "Restart the gene labs. We have a limited population now. We must ensure the next generation is superior. I want the mortality rate reduced to 0. "And then," Karras asked, "when we are perfect, what then?" Doom looked at his closed fist. "Then we lower the wall, and we show them what they could have been." Doom walked back into his throne room. He sat on the stone chair. He picked up his datapad. He had a civilization to manage. He had eternity to do it. The Chronicle of Hestia ends here. It is not a story of victory or defeat. It is a story of a divergence. In a galaxy of war, one world found peace. But it was the peace of the grave, the order of the prison, the silence of the machine. And on the throne, the man in the iron mask did not sleep. He calculated. For Doom, the work is never finished. The file designated Case Vermilion Hestia was officially sealed by the High Lords of Terror in the year 050.M42. It was not sealed because the threat had ended, but because the Imperium simply lacked the capacity to remember it. In a galaxy consumed by the Indomitus Crusade, the Plague Wars, and the awakening of the Pariah Nexus, a single star system enclosed in an impenetrable bubble of silver energy became a footnote. The Hestia system was erased from the merchant charts. The warp routes that passed near it were redrawn. Warning beacons were placed at the perimeter, broadcasting a repeating vox loop that declared the region cursed by the machine god. Over the centuries, the warning beacons failed. The servitors manning the monitoring station died of old age and were replaced by automated subroutines that eventually rusted into silence. The Hestia system became a ghost story told by void-born deckhands, a legend of a world where the war had actually stopped. Outside the sphere, the galaxy continued to burn. The Tyranids consumed 3 more sectors in the Segmentum Pacificus. The Necron Silent King erected new pylons that stilled the souls of billions. The forces of chaos tore open the reality of real space, turning planets into demon worlds where the laws of physics were merely suggestions. The Imperium fought on, a colossus crumbling under its own weight, feeding 1,000 souls a day to a dying light, trading blood for time in a transaction that had no profit. The bureaucracy grew slower, the rations grew smaller, the hope grew thinner. Inside the sphere there was no hunger, there was no disease, there was no crime. The Tesseract pocket that Victor von Doom had created was a closed system, a perfect terrarium of order. The atmospheric scrubbers, upgraded with Necron technology, kept the air at a precise level of purity. The synthetic nutrient vats, powered by the core of the captured Blackstone fortress, provided a balanced diet for every citizen. The population of Hestia had stabilized at exactly 4 billion, a number Doom calculated as the maximum efficiency for the available resources. Births were permitted only when deaths occurred. Every citizen had a purpose. Every citizen had a job. They woke at the sound of the morning chime. They worked in the factories or the hydroponic towers. They returned to their hab blocks at the evening chime. They did not pray to the Emperor. They did not pray to Doom. They simply acknowledged the reality of their survival. Generations passed. The children of the Iron Guard were born tall and strong, their genetics optimized by the viral strains Doom had perfected. They were smarter than their ancestors, but they were quieter. They lacked the frantic desperation that defined the human spirit in the 41st millennium. They did not understand fear, for there were no monsters inside the sphere. They did not understand hate, for there was no enemy to fight. They lived in a golden cage, safe from the wolves of the void, but stripped of the wildness that made them human. They were happy, in the way a well-oiled gear is happy. In the center of this silent utopia, the citadel stood unchanged. Victor von Doom sat on his throne. He had not removed his armor in 3 centuries. He did not need to. The suit sustained him, recycling his waste, filtering his blood, keeping his aging body in a state of suspended animation. He spent his days reviewing the metrics of his world. Efficiency was at 99.8%. It was a masterpiece of governance. He had proven that humanity could be saved, if only it surrendered its will to a superior intellect. Captain Karas, the first of the hybrids, stood by the window. He had not aged either, his Tyranid biology granting him a form of functional immortality. He looked out at the silver sky, the barrier that separated them from the madness outside. "Do you think they are still fighting?" Karas asked. His voice was a low rumble. "They will always fight," Doom replied. He did not look up from his data slate. "Disorder is the natural state of the savage." Karas touched the glass. "Sometimes I remember the bolter fire," he said. "I remember the screaming. It was terrible, but it was loud. It was alive. Silence is the sound of civilization," Doom said. Karas turned to look at his master. The metal mask was reflected in the black eyes of the Space Marine. Karas wondered if Doom was also a prisoner. He wondered if the dictator ever wanted to lower the shield, just to see if he could conquer the rest of the galaxy. But Karas said nothing. The loyalty subroutines were absolute. Doom placed the data slate on the table. He stood up and walked to the balcony. He looked down at his perfect world. He saw the orderly streets. He saw the healthy people. He saw the complete absence of suffering. "It is finished," Doom whispered. He had won. He had defeated the grim darkness of the far future. He had replaced it with the cold light of reason. And in doing so, he had created the loneliest place in the universe. The tragedy was not that Doom had failed. The tragedy was that he had succeeded, and there was no one left with the freedom to tell him he was wrong. The sphere hung in the void, a pearl of perfect sterility, waiting for the end of time.